What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Hedge. Wait a minute. This is not that. And if you noticed this is not that, then good on you, because I don't really make standalone videos like this all too often. It's not that I don't really enjoy doing it. It's not that I don't have the time to do it. It's just that I'm lazy. But because of the NBA play-in tournament, the first couple of games of which have been completed. I'm recording this on Thursday. The two final games to decide the 8 seeds will take place on Friday, but I really just wanted to collect all my thoughts and compile them and spit them out onto you guys, because typically when I record my podcast, the Hedging Screens podcast, every Tuesday, I go live on Twitch to record. It goes live every Wednesday. Generally, most of the things that I talk about are relatively still fresh, but with the playoffs starting this weekend, by the time Tuesday comes around, I'm already going to be in playoff mode. My thoughts on the play-in, it's going to kind of already be expired. And I also don't really want to wait that long to talk about it because, long story short, I'm not a fan of the play-in. I have not been a fan of the play-in since its inception. I thought that with the bubble championship, it was a little bit more excusable, mainly because the season got all fucked up because of you know what, and really any reason to try to draw up interest back in basketball was really the main goal. But Adam Silver has always been trying to kind of make the regular season mean more, to, you know, see if this somehow addresses the issue of stars resting, which is an issue in and of itself, and I feel it doesn't do that. I feel that straight up the play-in tournament is a gimmick. The way the current play-in is structured, so you have the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th seeds in both conferences playing. It's a single elimination game, but not really. The way it goes is, if you're unfamiliar with it, the 7th and the 8th seed plays each other. The winner of that moves on to be the 7th seed, and then the 9th and the 10th seeds play one another. The winner of that game goes to play the loser of the 7th seed game, which the winner of that game becomes the 8th seed. I'm making it sound way more convoluted than it actually is, but I really don't like the format because I don't really feel that it brings anything to the table, especially how the 9th and 10th seeds typically tend to play worse games because they are significantly worse teams, and we'll get into this in a little bit. But if Adam Silver is adamant about keeping the play-in tournament, I would seriously consider, or if I was an owner of an NBA team, I would approach him and kind of be like, I don't think that there's a reason to do 7, 8, 9, and 10, because the 7th and the 8th seeds have really earned their spots to be in the postseason, and to put them with some additional pressure before going into the postseason, I feel is unfair for them. If you really wanted to do it, I think the fairest way to do it, and of course, you know, fairness in sports is a topic in and of itself, but have the 1 through 7th seeds be locked, and then the 8th and the 9th seeds play each other for the 8th seed if they are within like a game or 1.5 games of one another. Because on Wednesday, for example, we watched the Spurs go up against the Pelicans. Spoiler alert, the Pelicans beat the Spurs. I think the final was 113 to 103. But neither of those teams deserve to be in the playoffs, especially with the Los Angeles Clippers now potentially not making it. The Pelicans were 12 games under 500, or 10 games under 500. The Spurs were 14 games under 500. It was different in the Eastern Conference, where you had the Nets, Cavs, Hornets, and Hawks all had the exact same record. And then 2 of those teams are going to have to miss the postseason, but that's how it would have been anyway. And I was saying that the play-in shouldn't be a thing even when we were unsure if the Nets were even going to qualify for the playoffs, but they turned it up because the regular season does matter, and they were able to shoehorn themselves into the 7th seed, fortunately. And perfect segue to talk about the first game of the play-in tournament. It was Brooklyn at Cleveland. Heading into this game, I was nervous for a couple of reasons. One, Cleveland is a spectacular team. This team should not be as good as they were. I know they've had injuries dealt to Colin Sexton and Jarrett Allen, both of whom were not available for Wednesday's game. But this was a team who, at the beginning of the year, was the best team in the Eastern Conference. And not just on luck, on actual merit, because Darius Garland is a monster. Evan Mobley is going to have a fantastic career. Then you have Kevin Love, you have Jarrett Allen, you have Colin Sexton. You have this collection of really young, vibrant, potential star talent, and they climb their way to the Eastern Conference. Of course, things got a little rocky, and Jarrett Allen not being there, the Cavs going on a little bit of a skid, gave me a little bit more optimism going into this game. But the main reason I was nervous for Brooklyn was because the Nets do a better job at beating themselves than any other team does beating them. I'm talking, regular things, effort on defense, mental lapses on offense, unnecessary turnovers, unforced turnovers, and then, of course, injuries play a role. Ben Simmons not being healthy, Joe Harris not being healthy either, and then Steve Nash kind of just forgetting how to coach on the spot. However, with all of that said, it was very difficult to bet against Brooklyn because they still have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving is Kyrie Irving. And in a setting like this, in this kind of winner-go-home situation, game plan flies out the window. In must-win games, every coach's game plan is you put the ball in the hands of your star players, and they go out, and they make plays, and they win the game for you. There really is no other game plan, and that kind of benefited the Nets because there was no added pressure on the coaching staff. It was kind of just like, it's 5-on-5, Kevin Durant and Kyrie going at Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. And in most of those cases, KD and Kyrie are going to dominate, which they did. Combined, they had about, I think it was 59 on 21 of 31 shooting. They got absolutely fantastic production from Nick Claxton, Andre Drummond, and Bruce Brown, who had, if I remember correctly, if I can recall off the top of my head without having to reference my notes, it was 18 points, 9 boards, 8 assists, and 3 steals. And a very fascinating development, which I saw go on throughout the course of this game, was Bruce Brown is a fantastic playmaker in certain spots. All throughout this season, Bruce Brown earned the reputation, and with last season as well, he earned the reputation of being just a glue guy who plays with a lot of intensity and ultimately plays with heart, effort, and does all the little things that help you win basketball games. Well, yes, he does all of that, and he has quickly become one of my favorite players on this team. But on Wednesday, we saw Bruce Brown play a style of basketball that we hadn't really seen throughout the season. Like, he was a legitimately impactful offensive player, and Cleveland repeatedly refused to treat him as such, as one would expect, going into this game and all throughout this game, especially later in it once Cleveland had climbed back because Nets were up by as many as like 18 or 21 or whatever it was. But because Cleveland has so much talent on offense, they were able to crawl back. I mean, you hit a couple threes, next thing you know, it's a single-digit game. And especially in the second half, Cleveland's defense was hell-bent on trapping KD and Kyrie almost relentlessly. And what that allowed Steve Nash to do, or whoever thought of this idea, was figure out a way to have Bruce Brown receive these passes from these double teams. Whether he's just hanging out at the top of the key, whether it's the free throw line, what they wound up doing was they wound up using Bruce Brown as the screener multiple times throughout the second half. So KD or Kyrie brings the ball up, Bruce Brown sets him a screen, Cleveland blitzes the screen, and then either KD or Kai or whoever the ball handler is sends a little skip pass to Bruce Brown, who's around the free throw line area. And because Bruce Brown has a very respectable floater arsenal, the big, whether it was Larry Markkinen or Kevin Love, had to step up, and that left Nick Claxton and Andre Drummond open on the baselines. Of Bruce Brown's 8 assists, I think 4 or 5 of them went to Nick Claxton, and all of them went to Nick Claxton in the fourth quarter because Cleveland's defense was leaving that baseline open for lobs, for dump passes. There was this one play, I'll probably try to splice it in during the editing process, where Bruce Brown has the ball right outside the restricted area, and Nick Claxton seals off Darius Garland, who is covering Kyrie in the corner, gets this little dribbler pass, and then finishes with a dunk in traffic. And it's an easy 2 points, and that's a huge reason why Nick Claxton finished with, I think, 13 on a perfect 5 of 5 or 6 of 6 shooting. Now, the obvious retort to that is,
well, that's not going to happen. against other defenses.
Defenses like Philly, defenses like Milwaukee, defenses like Miami, those two teams in particular that have a lot of length, have a lot of athleticism, both on the perimeter and in the paint, they're going to be able to stifle those chances. And yes, I do agree that because Jarrett Allen wasn't there, Cleveland's defense was a little bit softer. But it was softer not in terms of physical attributes, it was softer in terms of, actual production on defense. Like Jarrett Allen is more than just a shot blocker. And the difference in defensive rating is marginal when he's on the court and when he's off. I think it's only like 2 points per 100 possessions worse when he's on the court. Of course, over the last couple of weeks when he hasn't been healthy, it's gotten worse and worse. But beyond that, when you have somebody like Jarrett Allen, it's like teams aren't even getting into the paint at all. They're not taking shots around the basket. And I do agree that, yes, it's going to be harder to get those kinds of plays against a more physical, a more intimidating defense like Milwaukee or Miami. But that's not to say that they're not going to happen at all. That's not to say that that Milwaukee and Miami aren't going to have defensive lapses, aren't going to have instances where they don't have a shot blocker on the court, where they don't have an athletic big on the court. I'm looking at Milwaukee when they have to play Brook Lopez when maybe Giannis is resting. I know Brook Lopez is experienced, he's a big body, but the athleticism that Brooklyn brings might be able to offset that just for a little bit. I think that was really all I noticed outside of KD and Kyrie effectively taking over the game, which I'm not really too surprised about. The whole situation with Bruce Brown was one that I noticed and one that I think is really eye-opening, because also, even if teams do take away Nick Claxton underneath, someone's going to be left open if you're doubling KD and Kyrie. Is it going to be Patty Mills? Is it going to be Seth Curry? It's going to be very interesting to see how teams guard a five-man lineup that either has KD at the 4 or KD at the 5. And you use Bruce Brown as like a Draymond Green type role. Not to say that Bruce Brown is anywhere near Draymond Green's caliber as a player, but that same type of role. A multifaceted facilitator, screener, guy who doesn't have to go out and get a tremendous amount of points, but someone who's also a good enough playmaker to find his teammates for easy buckets. That's going to do it for this standalone video. If you guys did make it to the end, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a like on the video as well. All of my socials will be linked in the description box: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that fun stuff. Go ahead on over to the Twitch channel and follow me over there. That way you can come and hang out with me live when I record the podcast every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And once again, thank you guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.